Welcome to the Wicket.
Hello, and yes, we're back for another episode of your favourite cricket chat at The Wicket, Arab News' very own cricketing podcast. I'm your host, Brian Murgatroyd, and with me once again to discuss what's happening in the sport locally in the Gulf, regionally in Asia and worldwide, Arab News columnist Jon Pike and Arab News cricket reporter Subas Humagain. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi, John. Hi, Brian.
Hello, Brian. Hello, Subas.
And in this show, the 50th time the three of us have got together to talk cricket, we look back at a dramatic final test of the English summer, with Sri Lanka securing a crushing 8-wicket win at the Oval. We discuss news surrounding Brendan McCullum, appointed as England head coach across all formats, Andrew Flintoff, James Anderson, Mark Wood and Moeen Ali. We talk about England's women's tour of Ireland with contrasting results in the first two one-day internationals. We pick over the bones of Australia men's T20 international series in Scotland. We speak about the elevation of Phil Salt to the T20I captaincy for England in the continuing absence of Jos Buttler. We reflect upon the delayed start to the Afghanistan-New Zealand Test match in Greater Noida, India, and more broadly the Test format. And on top of that, as ever, Subas and Jon tell us what's caught their attention in the world of cricket in the recent past. Plenty to chat about then, as ever, so let's get the ball rolling. Sri Lanka turned the tables on England at the Oval in London and ruined the home side's hopes of a clean sweep in a Test summer for the first time since 2004, when the touring side won by 8 wickets with more than a day to spare. Put into bat, England reached 261 for 3 off the back of a return to form for Ollie Pope, as the stand-in captain made 154, but then they slipped to 325 all out. Sri Lanka, for their part, recovered from 93 for 5 thanks to runs from captain Dhananjaya de Silva and, yet again, Kamindu Mendis, but they trailed on first innings before their bowlers, an all-seam attack for this test, got to work, bowling out England for 156. Only 4 players reached double figures, the best of them Jamie Smith, who made 67 from 50 balls, as Lahiru Kumara took 4 for 21 and Vishwa Fernando captured 3 for 40. It left Sri Lanka needing 219 for a consolation victory following losses at Old Trafford and Lords, and they romped home thanks to the brilliance of Pathum Nissanka's unbeaten 127. Jon, first things first, a lot of people have labelled England's effort complacent, as on 2 occasions with the bat they failed to ram home their advantage. Is that how you see it, or should we be giving credit to Sri Lanka's bowlers in particular?
In the afternoon session of day 3, the Sri Lankan bowlers, Kumara and Fernando, got it right. The ball was swinging. They captured Root and Brook, LBW. Tactically, then Sri Lanka lost their way a bit afterwards, but Smith got himself out the last ball before tea. But to be bowled out in 34 overs was poor and showed an unnecessary desire to score runs quickly after the collapse in the first innings that you referred to. Very careless. It wasn't just Lawrence. He's been on the fringes and now looks to be even further out. And of course, the irony is that Sri Lanka are overtaking England on the World Test Championship ranking now. And my overall conclusion from England's performance is that they were really disrespectful of the format of Test cricket.
Jon, does this take the gloss off what was otherwise a perfect Test summer for England, with victories, of course, against the West Indies and Sri Lanka, 5 Test wins in total out of 6 matches?
I'm not sure that it would have been perfect anyway. If you measure it only in terms of 6 wins out of 6, then maybe. But there are still concerns over the top order batting and fast bowler injuries, and I think there's an attitude issue. And I think you've only got to look at Harry Brook, who's sadly been losing his way. He's got all the talent in the world, but he seems to find ways of getting out quite unnecessarily.
Subas, from an England perspective, what was more important, do you think? the defeat, or, on the other side of the coin, the return to form for Ollie Pope after 30 runs in his first 4 innings of the series?
Well, as long as your runs doesn't come in winning, because I think they don't count. Yes, Pope coming back to form was positive, but he couldn't stay for long in the second innings. England kept on losing wickets and folded out for just 156 despite having a good lead. And this loss at home, I think this should be more concerning. This was the last home test this summer for England, and to end this on a sour note, I think that's a bit cruel for the fans.
And Subas, what does this performance say about Sri Lanka? It was their 4th win in history in England. Is the future brighter than a Test series defeat would suggest?
I think the future is brighter if they can build a couple of good partnerships like they did in this third test. There are talents who can make a long run in this format. Coming to Mendes, we've been talking about him throughout this podcast. Pathum Nissanka step up at the top of the order and have already impressed in his early days. So they can be a long-term solution in top and middle. And once Timoth Karunaratne, we know, has runs in his back, I think if he comes back to his regular form, the top order looks solid than ever. On the bowling side, all bowlers played their roles in this third test, and batters, they complemented them and they got the result.
John, we can't let this test go without highlighting the fact that bad light played its part at the end of the first 3 days and left the paying public especially upset. And day one was the key example of that. It featured just 44.1 overs. You were there. What was the problem? And should bad light just be thrown in the bin once and for all, I wonder? The players are highly paid. The sight screens these days are good. And as the late, great Bob Willis once said, show me the coffins of the batters who've died because of bad light. Isn't it time to realise that sport is an entertainment? People pay very high prices for tickets in England, and so the players and umpires should just get on with it.
Well, remember, it also intervened at Lord's, and I think at the Oval there seemed a fairly desultory attempt to make up for that, and by bowling spin for too long, it's probably cost England the game. Of course, the obvious solution is not to play Tests in September and bin the 100, but that's not going to happen. I think something has to change. As you mentioned, batters are well protected these days. Maybe they could change to the use of the pink ball when there is bad light. And I think also you've got to take into account there is still an element of danger, and also insurance to take into account. So, but it needs redressing for sure.
And John, another small crowd on the final day, albeit one which offered the prospect of just about a session of play in total. Was it another example, after the situation on the 4th day at Lord's, of the administrators getting things wrong this summer? The wrong time of year for the Test match, the wrong day of the week, it was a working day, of course, and the wrong ticket pricing?
Well, it sounds like a broken record, but all roads lead to the 100. A tighter than ever schedule was created. At the Oval, Friday and Saturday with 4 houses. It's an event, an outing. I'm not sure how much reducing prices would encourage attendance on days 3 and 4, possibly day 3, which was a Sunday. Surely worth a try. But then, of course, next year India are visiting, and it's all going to be done and dusted by early August, prior to the 100. So this situation won't arise, and people have probably forgotten about it.
There's been plenty else to reflect upon in English cricket aside from the Oval Test match, as Brendan McCullum has been appointed as England's white ball coach in addition to his duties with the Test team. The appointment will start early next year, and he replaces Matthew Mott, who was sacked after England's failure to retain both the 50-over Cricket World Cup and the T20 World Cup over the past year. John, it's a reunification of the role of head coach across the formats. I wonder, does it surprise you, and can one man do it all?
Well, it's not a surprise. McCullum's got the respect. He didn't take much persuading. There seemed to have been quite a bit going on behind the scenes with Flintoff and Trescothick's roles. Flintoff now confirmed as the Lions coach. But I have to say that Butler's continued absence is a bit of a worry.
Subas, do you expect McCullum to re-energise the white ball side, and Jos Buttler in particular, in the same way as he's done with the Test team? McCullum has spoken about Jos Buttler being, in his words, miserable.
Well, if anyone can feel Butler, I think it should be McCullum. As a player, he's shared similar roles and has been up close to England cricket to get the feeling how things are around. And he knows what Butler can do if he gets the freedom. And I feel this statement of being miserable was more emphasizing on Buttler not being able to do what he is capable of. So injuries have caused problems in recent times, but I think with time in hand for McCullum's arrival, Buttler will be raring to go, and McCullum, as he's brought the baseball in Test cricket, I think the white ball looks more fitting for him to experiment his new things, and maybe England could have a new way of playing in limited over crickets too.
Marcus Trescothick will oversee England's upcoming white ball action against Australia, while, as John mentioned, Andrew Flintoff, who was acting as an assistant coach during the Oval Test match in Trescothick's absence, has been appointed head coach of the England Lions, the men's side's shadow lineup. At the same time, James Anderson, forced into international retirement earlier this summer, will continue his role as bowling mentor during England's winter tours to Pakistan and New Zealand. John, your reaction to those decisions?
Well, clarifications have been provided, and they look to be the right decisions for the short term. I'm looking particularly for an improvement in their attitude and general approach to Test cricket, which fell far short at the Oval.
Subas, talking of England's winter, it appears likely that all 3 tests of the tour of Pakistan will take place in Pakistan, with Multan and Rawalpindi the likely venues. This follows building work ahead of next year's ICC Champions Trophy, ruling out Lahore and Karachi, while the suggestion that one of the tests may be played offshore, possibly in the United Arab Emirates, seems to have been shelved, although no official confirmation of that has been received as we record this podcast. Isn't this yet another example of the confusion within the current PCB administration, given England's due to be playing the first test in Pakistan less than a month from now on the 7th of October?
Not for the first time, Brian. I think we've seen shift of venues days before the scheduled match in previous instances, and this has hampered Pakistan themselves and their players to prepare according to the conditions and playing surface that's available. PCB, both on and off the pitch, has struggled to make things normal. This is only for the tarnishing their image in international arena, and with Champions Trophy looming close and Zesa taking the helm at ICC, I don't think this will help Pakistan to rebuild their image.
Well, one player who won't be in Pakistan or New Zealand is fast bowler Mark Wood, ruled out of the rest of the year with a stress injury to his right elbow. It followed what he expected to be a routine scan on that elbow, which has troubled him in the past following the leg injury that ruled him out of the test at the Oval. John, we spoke on the previous podcast about the question marks over the durability of Mark Wood ahead of next year's Ashes series. There's no doubting his pace or his determination, but this really highlights what we chatted about then, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, and I suspect it will be a hard slog back to fitness for him. And it's probably unrealistic to harbour thoughts of him playing a full part in 2025-26 in Australia.
Yes, it looks a long way away for him at the moment, but one thing he doesn't lack is determination. Subas, a word on Moeen Ali, who's announced his retirement from all international cricket. He came back last year in tests to play in the Ashes series, and he finishes his England career with a remarkable record: 68 tests with 3,094 runs, including 500s, plus 204 wickets. And on top of that, 138 one-day internationals with 2,355 runs and 111 wickets. And then added to that, 92 2020 internationals with 1,229 runs and 51 wickets. There are World Cup winning medals in both formats in there too. That's an incredible body of work, isn't it?
Indeed, Brian. I think throughout his career, he was silently racking up the numbers and doing his job. Not flashy and all noticeable that we see in modern cricket, but I think he's one of the first pick for the captains to get 3,000 runs and 200 wickets in Test cricket. I think that's not an easy feat. Him and Stokes being together in last 9 years, I think that's really helping England to get that extra player and maintain the team balance whenever it's needed as per the conditions. It won't be easy for England to find like replacement to replace Ali in the team.
John, one other talking point for you about English cricket, and since our previous episode, the quarter-finals of the Counties 2020 competition, the T20 Blast, have taken place, with Surrey, Sussex, Somerset and Gloucestershire winning through to finals day on Saturday the 14th of September. It's a much maligned tournament, but its own Twitter handle posted something this past week that said the quarter-final attendances were 44,000 fans across 4 matches, a record for the competition, with finals day shunted to mid-September to make room for the 100. Aren't those numbers showing administrators where the fans' loyalties lie, and will the administrators take any notice?
Well, they should, but they won't, and not at least in the short term, and focuses on getting rich quick with the 100 sale and on the broadcast contract until 2028. And after that, reversion may happen, especially with the expected influence of Indians in the English and Welsh game.
Well, that's all for the future. But Subas, I wonder, is the T20 Blast something that resonates with you, or do you think people outside of the UK?
If you talk about our area, just like county cricket out the 100, the talk is near to none. Even though the TV timings are perfect fit for the subcontinent, I think the lack of players from the region hasn't helped to get that eyes.
Well, while England's men have been in action on home soil, the women's team is across the Irish Sea, playing white ball matches against their island counterparts. The tour involves 3 one-day internationals in Belfast as part of the ICC Women's Championship, the mechanism for qualification for next year's ICC Women's World Cup, plus 2 2020 internationals that will take place in Dublin. As we record this podcast, the first 2 one-day internationals have been played, and in the first of them, there was a remarkable performance by Kate Cross, captaining the team in the absence of Heather Knight, who, like the majority of the squad selected for next month's T20 World Cup in the UAE, is resting ahead of a training camp in Abu Dhabi. Cross took 6 for 30 before coming in with her side at 156 for 6, chasing 211, and she then made an unbeaten 38 from 36 balls to steer her side home. In Game 2, there was an equally remarkable performance from Tammy Beaumont, who made an unbeaten 150 from 139 balls as England totalled 320 for 8 before bowling Ireland out for just 45, their lowest ever total in one-day internationals. John, let's talk about match 1 first and that performance by Kate Cross. It must be one of the greatest all-round efforts in England cricket history, mustn't it?
Well, for women, certainly a fabulous effort, especially for somebody not renowned for her batting. Great leadership and perhaps with a point to prove.
Yes, Kate Cross not in the squad for that T20 World Cup. Orla Prendergast was the standout performer for Ireland in that first match, continuing her outstanding recent form that's earned her a contract with the Adelaide Strikers in the Women's Big Bash League in Australia. She made 76 from 87 balls, but Ireland still fell short. Subas, I wonder, in terms of that Game 1, if you were Ed Joyce, the Ireland head coach, would you be pleased to see how close the side came to inflicting a defeat on England, or disappointed they couldn't win against what was, in effect, an England second team?
Even second side on paper, I think there's not much difference in quality with the first choice team. Tammy Beaumont, I think, so how she just can be, and Kate Cross, if not with the bat, how she can create havoc with the ball, and that innings was really special. Ireland, they can take a lot of learning on how to approach the game. It's all about the learnings to take on from here to the qualifiers, and they know already that they cannot be at the top half of the table in the Women's Championship, so they'll take everything they can learn from here.
Yes, as for Game 2, John, you've been a fan of Tammy Beaumont for a long time. She never gets a look in 2020 internationals these days, but that 150 not out, it really did show her quality, didn't it?
Yes, someone else, perhaps with a point to prove. It's her 10th ODI century, the most ever by an English women player, and only slightly behind the big names of Meg Lanning and Susie Bates.
Subas, it's been a season of progress for Ireland with their one-day international series win against Sri Lanka. How can you account then for the batting collapse we saw in that second match, just one player in double figures, and how easy will it be for the players and coach Ed Joyce to put that behind them?
It certainly won't be easy to put it behind, but when you have your main players out within 3 overs of the game, it was a mountain to climb, and only Ona Raymond got double figures. But it's time they forget that one. Take the positives, if there were not any, but you need to see the brighter side and look forward. It's a performance to forget for them, and the coach should take on from here and focus on the brighter side?
Well, we mentioned that the ICC Women's Championship is very much a factor in the one-day international series. England are already near the top of the table and so are assured of a spot in that World Cup next year, while Ireland are bottom with just 2 wins, both last month against Sri Lanka. And so they'll play in a qualifier to try and secure a spot in next year's tournament in India. By the time we record our next episode, the tour will have finished, and we'll wrap up the action next time here at the Wicket. Australia's men have been preparing for white ball matches against England to wrap up the Northern Hemisphere summer, and ahead of those matches they've played 3 2020 internationals against Scotland in Edinburgh, and those matches certainly served up some memorable action. In the first game, Australia won by 7 wickets with a remarkable 62 balls in hand after a boundary blitz by Travis Head and captain Mitchell Marsh. Head scored 80 from only 25 balls, including 12 fours and 5 sixes, while Marsh made 39 in only 12 deliveries, with 5 fours and 3 sixes of his own. At one stage, 11 successive deliveries went to or over the boundary as records fell like autumn leaves. Game 2 saw Josh Inglis produce a stirring innings of 103 from 49 balls as Australia won by 70 runs. And in the final match, Cameron Green was the one who produced the fireworks, his 62 not out from 39 balls, hurrying his side to a 6-wicket win with 23 deliveries to spare. John, let's talk about Travis Head. With so much white ball cricket for him this year, how easy or how difficult will it be for him to get back into red ball mode for the tests against India later this year?
Well, I'm sure he's going to be super confident. Australia do have vacancies at the top of the order with Warner gone and ongoing debates about Steve Smith's best position. They've got backup in the middle order with all-rounders. I don't see it should be a problem for him once he gets back in the nets.
Subas Josh Inglis, he's had to be patient, but after ousting Alex Carey as one-day international glove man at the 50-over World Cup last year, he's comfortably a first pick in both white ball formats. Can you see a situation where he can challenge for the test role against Carey too? Or is that still a fair way down the track?
While it's fair to give English a shout for that club work in long format, I think Carey has been keeping well and should keep his spot. For white ball, I think English is younger, a bit more aggressive, and has got runs. But for Test, Carey has been sort of runs in recent times, but he has been dependable behind the stumps, and that's more important when it comes to red ball cricket. He has been with the team for some time, and I wouldn't expect any changes before the Ashes series. English, however, deserves to be in the scenes, but not quite ousting Carey in red ball for me.
And Subas, there was quite a bit of chat about Mark Watt, the left-arm spin bowler, in the first match, and the Australians balking at his quick release delivery where he bowls from behind the stumps at the bowler's end to try and rush the striker. He actually bowled Josh Inglis only for the umpire to rule it as dead ball, and the same thing happened later in the innings with Marcus Stoinis on strike. Surely, once the batter looks up, the bowler should be allowed to deliver the ball. Are the umpires right, do you think, under the law? Or are they being too batter-friendly? After all, everyone knows Mark Watt does this, so surely the batters complaining they're not ready is out of order, isn't it?
Well, there is another talk of the law where the things are not clear if it's legitimate or not. But for me, for the ball to be legal, the bowler should at least be in the umpire's vision. We saw Nepal's Karan Kesari doing the same, bowling from a lot behind, but Watt has been doing it frequently, and the opposition knows that too. Well, if umpire is okay with the bowling action, I think the batters should be ready as well. We should just take it as his run-up style that he's been doing for a long time. But as long as the umpires feel that there could be chucking or there could be some illegal deliveries, so I think they should be in the vision of umpire.
Yes, that is the key. As long as he can be seen by the umpires, then potentially it is a legal delivery. John, 3 losses for Scotland, and aside from Brandon McMullen again confirming his class with 2 50s, there wasn't an awful lot to write home about. It doesn't look as though a whole lot was achieved by them in these matches. But for Scotland, I guess series like this are all about a lot more than just those ball statistics, aren't they?
They are, and top amongst those are exposure of the players against the best in the world can only help their development, plus a window for Scottish cricket in general, something that the administrators there have been angling for, understandably, for quite a long time. and they've got something out of it, albeit in September.
Well, Australia will now play 3 T20 internationals and 5 one-day internationals in England starting on the 11th of September. And Phil Salt will captain England in those T20Is, with Jos Buttler still coming back from the calf injury that meant he missed the 100. John, a word on Phil Salt's elevation. He's not a name I've heard before in relation to the captaincy, although I know he's an excellent thinker on the short-form game, having encountered him at the Desert Vipers in the UAE's own T20 league, the ILT20. Does his elevation surprise you?
Yes, it did. But looking at the squad, who else? I suppose they need to prepare for when Butler ends his time. The management has a habit of thinking outside of the box. Sam Curran, perhaps. The squad is a mix of old and new, especially in the quick bowling department. And then there's the question about how important is a captain in T20 anymore, given the whole array of analysts and assistants that are available in deciding who does what and when.
Well, Subas, Australia fast bowler Nathan Ellis has missed out because of a hamstring injury picked up during the 100, but Josh Hazlewood has returned from a calf injury to take his place. Who do you make favourites for the white ball series and why?
Well, it's a tough call to make at the moment for T20. I think Australia have a better team on paper with a lot of international experience. New faces dominating the Indian side, but they have played T20 cricket recently. So I think I feel it's a bit of a risk to take many new faces against the Aussies. For ODI, with the big names coming back to England side, I think it will be a tough fight.
And John, the final one-day international of this tour will take place on the 29th of September. Even allowing for global warming, that seems very late in the summer to be playing international cricket, doesn't it? There must be a serious risk of weather-related issues, and it also has the potential to be not all that pleasant for spectators sitting to watch a match.
Well, I don't see much or feel much global warming in England this September. Quite the opposite. Yesterday was cold enough at the Oval. Old Trafford was bitter even on August the 21st. I mean, perhaps 2024's just been unusually cold and damp. As we all know, weather's very difficult to predict, but it does once again question the place of the 100 and the fixation on it to be played in August to the detriment of the fixtures we're now seeing in September.
Well, we'll chat about the start of the England-Australia white ball matches in our next episode. As we record this podcast, Afghanistan are in the midst of a test against New Zealand in Greater Noida in India, or they should be. There was no play in the first 4 sessions of the match due to a wet outfield. And by the time you hear this podcast, the delay is likely to have been even longer. Subas, Greater Noida doesn't appear to have done a great deal to increase its chances of being a permanent home for Afghanistan based on what's happened here, with drainage issues at the end of the monsoon season delaying the start of the test. Is that just unfortunate for the venue, given the time of year the match has been scheduled, or is it a failing on its part?
Well, even though you can say rain played its part, how can you not have play when it doesn't rain for 2 days? If you want to be international venue for a test team, I think the basics are much needed. Not having a proper drainage facility and seeking approval as test venue itself, I think that's a lot surprising. ACB, BCCI and local body, I think they should all take blame on their part, improve the status of the ground. If not, Afghanistan will have to rely on away matches only.
And Subas, Hashmatullah Shahidi, the Afghanistan captain, has called for certainty over the side's home test venue or venues, given no side wants to tour Afghanistan due to security concerns. And he's also called for more tests for his side, as opposed to one-off games like this. How realistic are both requests, I wonder?
Well, with the Noida situation, I think it's very sad case to see. For what I have heard, the ground was underprepared already. And in this case, I think Afghanistan have themselves to blame a lot more than others. We know that they have been reliant on India for a long time, but since they are the host of the match themselves, I think it is them that should have made sure it's not all of a sudden they get the ground or anything. So everyone knows they're playing in India. So playing in Afghanistan is not possible at the moment. And they're trying to get more tests, but they have got result on the side as well. But for them to tour away, I think a lot comes to the broadcasting revenues, and also at first they should have results on their side, and then and on then only then they'll get the matches. And when New Zealand is touring them, I think they should have made the ground ready and expected a good match. But the first 2 days has not been good for them, and if they can't keep this up, I think they should focus more on the results and try to get more matches against the top teams. So this New Zealand situation, I think that ruins a lot to them.
John, talking of more tests, as Hashmatullah Shahidi has done, if this match ever starts, it's the first of 9 for New Zealand in the space of 3 months, with 2 matches in Sri Lanka, 3 in India, and then 3 at home to England to follow. With a schedule like this, does this suggest to you that the woes of Test cricket are overstated?
There's an element of cramming in order to fit in a number of World Test Championship matches. And because of the shorter format demands, Test cricket's really been forced into windows, which makes the pattern look very patchy. For me, the woes are as much to do with the quality of performance as quantity, as short format techniques infest the longer game, as we've seen with England in the last few days. There were several passages of play at the Oval when it felt as if Test cricket was being played, mainly by Sri Lanka, ironically. And it puts me in mind of the comments we shared in the week from Shan Massoud, who said, you cannot prepare for science and then sit for a maths exam. If you're being tested for maths, you study maths. To play red ball cricket, you must play red ball cricket.
Yes, wise words there from Shan Massoud in the wake of Pakistan's defeats to Bangladesh in their home test series. John, I also read a very interesting tweet from Robert Croft, the former England off-spinner, over the past week. He wrote that it's time for people to stop negative messaging and negative talk about the future of tests, as he feels people talking down the future of the format runs the risk of making it something that sponsors and broadcasters won't invest in and fans won't turn up to watch, almost making Test cricket's demise self-perpetuating. Does he have a point?
A question I'd ask is who's doing the negative messaging? There are big names in the game who are talking Test cricket up and looking to protect it. But do the sponsors, the advertisers, the marketeers and the social influencers of franchise cricket care about Test cricket? I doubt it, as money's their game. This is a new battleground, and I think a Test for the ICC caught between a rock and a hard place. I don't think it's a simple case of a self-perpetuating demise. I think it's more a matter of what attitude the next generation takes towards Test cricket.
Well, Subas, New Zealand have recruited former Sri Lanka spinner Rangana Herath and ex-India assistant coach and former Test opening batter Vikram Rathore on short-term contracts for the subcontinental matches they're playing. Remember, England did the same with Kieron Pollard for the T20 World Cup in the Caribbean. And Sri Lanka had ex-England batter Ian Bell in their dressing room for their latest series. What are your views on these types of appointments? Do you like to see players who once played for one country crossing the divide to work for the opposition?
I think it's more to get the idea rather than overall coaching, in my opinion. Rathore and Herath, I think they know the conditions in this side of the world, and New Zealand are not used to playing here. Their inputs will certainly help the team, and I feel these sort of short-term appointments, they're beneficial in many ways. Financially, it lessens the burden on the board, and the ones involved, I think they can make their strong point, and maybe if there's good feedback, they can offer those services to other teams in coming days. About crossing the divide, I think it's all professional. These we see coaches against their nations in World Cup finals as well. So these bilaterals, I think they're nothing compared to this situation.
John, do these appointments really offer any value? As given the volume of cricket these days, surely there are no secrets left in the game about conditions and players, are there?
Well, there are a few secrets given the army of analysts now deployed, but I think it's important how this information is used on the pitch, and local knowledge can be very helpful. These days, a few metres or even inches difference in where to stand in an outfield against particular batters could turn a match. And think about England's decision to bat first in Mumbai in the World Cup against South Africa. A bit of local knowledge might have prevented that.
That's a notorious example of not having that local knowledge and paying the price, with England literally cooked in the field there in that defeat against South Africa. Well, New Zealand's series in Sri Lanka sees both tests taking place in Galle, starting on the 18th of September, and then the 3-match series in India begins in Bengaluru on the 16th of October. And finally, gentlemen, as we always do, let's hear from you about something that's caught your attention this week in the world of cricket. Sabash, first of all?
Well, Hong Kong have been knocked out of the World Cup qualifiers in harshest way possible. They qualified for the EC Emerging Cup ahead of Nepal, but won't be competing in the Asia qualifiers of the next edition's World Cup. They were level on points and were third in the table in comparison to rounded with Kuwait, who they were scheduled to play in the last match. It was a winner takes all match. They put 139 on the board and had Kuwait 11 for 2 in 4 overs, but the rain meant no play was possible and Hong Kong crashed out in the net run rate. And the only loss in the tournament was against Malaysia by 3 runs, who went on to top the table. And they had only 1 run win over Singapore. So the Australian cricket's harshest way, I think Hong Kong has taken a fuse blow. They were preparing for this tournament for a long time and it's ended in a sour note. It's going to be tough for them to come back.
Well, another example there, if you need it, of the cutthroat nature of associate cricket with full members. So often it's, oh, we've lost a game, we'll play another one next week. But with associates, it just goes to show there's so much riding on every fixture that those teams play. So heartbreak for Hong Kong. John, what's tickled your fancy?
I was stunned to see Shakib Al Hassan's name on the Surrey team sheet. Is there no shame in the game anymore? It's the back end of the county championship. Surrey seeking its 3rd consecutive title. They're playing their nearest challengers, Somerset. Hassan bowled 33.5 overs, taking 4 for 97. Surrey have frozen out and discarded promising young spinners over the last couple of years, released to other counties in favour of a seam attack. Surely it's time for a stricter sort of transfer mechanism to prevent this sort of thing happening, even allowing 4 of the players in this test match.
I suppose on the plus side of the coin, John, you can say at least you've got a quality overseas player coming in, but on the other side, well, just one match. And obviously he's taken the place of potentially a local young spinner. So, difficult situation indeed from that perspective. Surrey taking a call. And obviously, with 4 wickets for Shakib in the first innings, it's a call they'll regard as having been successful. Well, that's all for this episode of The Wicket. We'll be back soon with more cricket chat from the Gulf region, Asia and worldwide. As ever, please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on what you've heard wherever you get your podcast. So 50 shows between the 3 of us, done and dusted. We'll raise our bats, take fresh guard and set our stalls out to try and reach 3 figures. This is Brian Murgatroyd along with Jon Pike and Subas Humagain saying thanks for listening, and until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.